Our continental breeds of cattle, specifically we've got here from a breed show, Texas market steer shows, we will have our Charolais, Chianina, Simmental, Limousin, and Maine Anjou. And those will be our specific breeds that fall into that continental breed category. Our continental cattle are typically known as more of a terminal cross, meaning is on average those breed groups of cattle will tend to be heavier muscled, larger framed, and heavier boned cattle that in the end will yield feeder steers or our market steers that are higher yielding, so more red meat yield, and they're higher performing when we put those cattle on feed.
Our Chianina breed, a breed that is relatively new to our exotic lineup, kind of introduced back in the late 70s, a breed that was very, very popular. When they hit the United States, a lot of cattlemen went to using this type of cattle because of the terminal crossing in there, and as well as the extra growth that these cattle possess. And even today, 25 years later, we still see a lot of Chianina cattle being exhibited in our major stock shows. In fact, in most of our major stock shows, this is one of the bigger lineups of breeds that's out there. Some acceptable breed characteristics that we must look at is the fact that they must exhibit Chianina influence in their head, ear, eye, nose, and in their skeleton. Any shade of black, red, gray, or yellow is okay. They can also be brindles, baldies, base-faced, or mottled in their color. Their head tends to be a little bit narrower through the center portion of their skull, and they exhibit a longer, thinner type muscle. Their muscle conformation tends to be smoother. They aren't coarse or excessively round, and skeleton tends to be a little bit lighter in their joints and also a little bit smoother about their joints as well. On our discriminatory breed characteristics is the fact that they would be coarse jointed or coarse in their skeleton. They have excessive spotting above their underline, and meaning that white comes up over their side. An absolute disqualification is the fact that they appear to be purebred of any other breed. And we see this a lot in our major stock shows. People tend to think we can run anything as a key, but if you bring something up there that's black and white spotted and he doesn't appear to have any key in him, you're probably going to end up in that AOB class. And just because the key class is there doesn't mean it's a catch-all. And classifiers that are really watching that are going to catch those Maine Anjou cattle that they may feel like they'd have a better chance at being a key, but end up basically being sent back to where they belong or sent back to that AOB class. Looking at some of the cattle in the key class. Here's a black steer that exhibits those key qualities. Really, I've got a longer nose about him. He's really pretty up through that front end, smooth in that shoulder. He's one, as you look at his bone work, tends to be a little more refined there, as well as refined in those joints. They're smoother in their muscle pattern, a little bit more level down his top. A really nice steer. Here's another calf that would fall in that Chianina breed. Longer, more refined about that neck. He's got a little bit longer muzzle. Again, when you study the bone work in this red steer, he tends to be a little bit flatter in the skeleton on that bone work, a little more refined in that bone work. But when you look at the muscle pattern, again, not a real round muscle, it's more of a flat type muscle, but a really nice steer to exemplify in this Chianina breed. Here's one that certainly would throw some questions up, especially some folks would be concerned about him leaving the breed maybe that he should be in. But actually, when you study this steer and really look at him, we felt like he would classify. Again, you look at his bone work, tends to be a little more refined. The coarseness of his joints isn't there. He's very, very smooth in his joints. He's flatter in that muscle pattern in his rump. He's flatter over that rump. And he's really long and extended up through that front end. And we felt like this was a Chianina characteristic, and this calf could certainly be in the Chianina class. Another one of these steers that we felt like would definitely go Chianina, more extension up through that front end, smoother about that shoulder. He's refined in his bone work. He's flat in that bone pattern. You get behind this steer from the rear quarter, he tends to be flat, not as round in that muscle pattern. Felt like this guy would classify all day long as a key. Here's a black Chianina steer. Again, if you study that shoulder forward, that extension of neck, that larger type head with that longer, thinner type muzzle. Again, studying his bone work, he tends to be a little flatter in that bone work, a little more refined. A really nice steer. Here's another calf that may be a little more questionable. However, when we study this steer and look at him from his shoulders forward, again, really long and clean through that neck, he's smooth in that shoulder region. He's got that flat bone that we're looking for on that hind leg, and he's a little more refined in that bone structure, as well as you look at that muscle structure, tends to be a little flatter in his type and kind. Another good example of a Chianina steer, again, a little finer in his bone work, a little more refined in his muscle pattern, but a nice steer, very structurally sound and correct. Here's one that may be a little more questionable in his type and kind, whether he gets in or not, but as you study the breed, only having to be a 16th, this guy would be one that could or could not get in, and it depends on the group of men that are classifying. He's a little deeper sided in his kind, he's a little coarser about his joints, he's got a lot more bone work to him, and when you study him up through that neck and front end, again, he's got a little more shoulder power. I like the extension that he possesses, so in my book, he probably gets by, but some people will throw a flag up on this steer just because he's heavy middle and really got a lot of body to him. Another calf that we felt like would classify fairly easily. This is one of those that has that dappling over his side, but you study the steer, we felt like he fit that breed pretty well. On this particular steer, we're looking at him, and this is a calf that we felt his color pattern was okay, but as we begin to look at the head on this calf, it gets a little shorter about his muscle. He's one that's got a large head on him, but it's a little bit short from his eyes down to his nose. A calf that gets a little more coarser about his joints. One that gets a little thicker and rounder about that muscle pattern through that rear quarter, and his depth of body. You know, this calf is really a powerful kind of steer, probably fits better in a different breed than a Chianina.